Good evening, good morning, and good night. Welcome to Inappropriate Radio. It's your host, Tashana. Let's get into this. So, hi guys. I hope all is well. As of late, I'm noticing that literally a lot of the topics that we've discussed, I'm not even joking. I thought we already covered them, right? I thought we had already discussed them. And God is like, girl, no, have a seat. But I think it is important for us to have this conversation. Now, we are going to be discussing drugs, right? And now we've discussed We've discussed the spirit, right, of addiction and how it can run from generations to generation and destroy bloodlines, right? But we haven't necessarily went into drugs and made the connection on certain dynamics that are related to the spirit, right? So I think it's important for us to have this conversation. Okay, so we have a mental self, an emotional self, a physical, and a spiritual self, right? And obviously all of these things are intertwined and they're correlated, right? Everything is connected. But I think it's important for us to realize that each of these versions of ourselves require a different type of attention in order for the oneness of ourselves to be balanced out. Now, alcohol and drugs, including smoking, may be one of the rampant spirits that run through this bloodline because of how it mimics so many different other conditions. And what do I mean by that? When we observe people, it's really important for us to understand them from the mental, the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual aspect. Now, the mental you is how you think, the emotional you is how you feel and therefore respond to that thing. Obviously, the physical part is your physical vessel, and the spiritual is the part that you do not have tangible access to, right? Now, your memory being affected, right? Loss of comprehension, anxiety, restlessness, depression, being moody, identity crisis. These are all things that are related to, drugs and then the physical body, right? But I think it's important for us to also note that these symptoms are also those related to witchcraft and when someone has put a spell on you, right? So this is, again, why it's really important to know yourself, to have that relationship with the Creator, to build the discernment, to learn how to be obedient and just really, really hone in on certain things. Now, we have these neurotransmitters, right? And these neurotransmitters are basically like these little communicators, if you will, right? They help messages go from one receptor to the next, right? Now they carry chemical signals, okay? Whether it's dopamine, serotonin, GABA, melatonin, we can go on and on. The glutamate, there's quite a few, right, that we know. But melatonin, dopamine, serotonin, they appear to be in norepinephrine or epinephrine. They kind of appear to be the more popular ones, mainly because they have been easier to synthesize, right? We see a lot of people giving their children melatonin, and we know that dopamine is related to the happy feeling and all of that. And we're going to get to some other things, but marijuana and heroin, they mimic the chemical structure, right, of your natural transmitters, which allows the neurons to be activated. So this is where it gets interesting, because realize that these drugs have a natural source, right? Remember, all of these natural, the plants, the animals, we all have, compounds that are just like those in the earth, like everybody else, right? 96% of living things. So your body is coming into contact with something that's it's not as foreign as we think. Of course, it's synthetic, it's been synthesized. Like alcohol, right? Alcohol has sugar, it has grains, fruits and vegetables, yeast, bacteria. These are things that are not foreign to the body. So it would be easy to understand why people are having a hard time letting go, and how they even get, addicted anyway. Dopamine is released, right, when you are under the influence of all drugs. Okay, cannabinoids are very similar, if not the same, if not like just 2% off, right? They're the same as endocannabinoids, which are naturally produced in our body. You can find the cannabinoids in the sativa plant, right? And we naturally have these cannabinoids in our bodies. So again, the receptors from the cannabinoids, are related to the endocannabinoids, and there you go. So this is just an overview, right, of how certain substances come into our body and how we are easily affected and influenced. Now, the crazy part of all of this, right, the same physical experiences we have when we're under the influence of these drugs is the same experience that we're having when we are having a spiritual experience, right? So, and the spiritual experience could be just you being enlightened or you being attacked and then you acting out that attack physically. So, and I think it's important to state that your brain is less active during prayer. Okay? And I just wanted to highlight marijuana and heroin because of them being able to activate the neurons, because their chemical structure mimicking our natural transmitters. Now, the reason why this is important, because the transmitters must be inactivated or removed to prevent constant stimulation, right? So if you are constantly being overstimulated, you become obsessed, compulsive, you have hormone dysfunctions, insomnia, even early death, right? People with depression have low serotonin. Like, that's just an example of how these synapses and these imbalances in these neurotransmitters can lead to unfavorable outcomes. So if you wanted to exercise, you will release the endorphins and then the cannabinoids will be released. Obviously, if you're smoking too much, it's going to affect you in many ways. As far as your organs are concerned, that's something different. But I'm stating this because I find that, when we observe people, we look at them through one of the four lenses, whether it's through our mental eyes, emotional, physical, or spiritual eyes, or we view them as acting out through their mental, emotional, physical, or spiritual selves, right? You have to be able to view people and allow people to carry themselves through each of these. Obviously, if you are imbalanced in one area, how you act out from that stance is going to vary. And I just want to state that you know, the different classes of drugs obviously is going to vary, and drug addiction doesn't always come about from a spirit or a curse or a bad environment. Sometimes health issues or just traumatic situations can lead to addiction as well, right? We understand that. So this is, again, still important because each of those instances can lead to a spiritual awakening. Now, we have body parts, mainly the brain, that are grossly affected. Now, obviously, if you are constantly consuming alcohol or drugs, your organs over time will, start to rot, or you'll start having complications. But when you really think about it, there is no profound difference, because all of these things mimic one another. So how do we separate psychosis from a bad trip or just an outlandish spiritual experience? I mean, because internally, at least, maybe not on a spiritual level, but definitely on a physiological level, there is literally no difference, right? These synapses are happening under the influence, whether you are having a spiritual awakening or whether you are having a mental break, right? The same exact thing is happening. You're having these different synapses. These neurons are communicating with each other, and they're carrying out these messages that are going to release these particular effects, whether it's dopamine or serotonin or melatonin, whatever it is, right? Drugs can do that. A spiritual awakening can do that. And even though we did say that the brain is less active during prayer, that's just prayer. And I think that is also a telltale sign of, the spirit going into a different dimension. But again, like, how do we separate psychosis from a bad trip, or just like a really crazy spiritual experience? Some kind of awakening or enlightenment. Like if we're out and you see somebody just bust out speaking out in tongues, or somebody just, start flying or some shit. Do you know that you're not going crazy? Are you sober? Or is God trying to tell you something? Okay? Because we've all heard of cases where people who live relatively healthy lifestyles catching cancers and other conditions that are related to drug use and abuse. So again, on a physiological level, we can't separate it. So I think that's one of the main things. Like, these diagnoses, might need to be recanted. They even have different fields in psychology, that go into these types of topics, and it's really more in depth. They have neurotheology, transpersonal psychology. They even have I'm trying to get the name of it. It's basically a psychedelic psychiatry, basically, where you undergo therapy while you're under the influence of psychedelics. Okay, so this is just the point. So I just want to know, like, is it bad genetics or is it a generational curse? Okay, we have to learn to operate out of our mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual selves, and allow people to do the same and receive them correctly. But I'm going to end it here. I do hope all is well. I hope y'all are drinking your water, eating y'all fruit and y'all vegetables, and sipping on y'all tea because it's free. I hope y'all are getting y'all rest, and I hope y'all are ready to get them hoodies and that hot cocoa out. All right. Love y'all. Peace.